Welcome back to the podcast. My name is Joseph Clough and this is episode 814. Now in today's episode, we are talking about how we can move ourselves from a place of being stuck, helpless, where we fear, worries, doubts, anxieties, and ultimately where we feel like a victim, and how we can move from that place in becoming the victor of our life. So I want you to be vulnerable for a while. Would that be okay? Because if we really want to make a change, I really believe that we have to just stop for a moment and to weigh things up, to get a perspective. We live in a world which is just so in the moment, but we're also consumed by all the expectations upon ourselves to be a certain way, to achieve certain goals. And sometimes it can just make us feel like we're not worthy, that we're not deserving, that we're not capable. We fear failure, fear rejection, fear success, fear what other people may think of us. And without trying for it to come across as mean, because it's not that way at all, but the real truth and reality is, if our life is not how we really want it to be right now, it means we're a victim to it. Right? And I'm not talking about just like stereotypical victim, but more victim that we're not in control of who we are or where we want to be right now. That can all change. But if we are feeling like a victim to our past, if we feel like a victim to certain events in our past, so things that people did to us, things that were told, maybe we had parents with high expectations, which made us feel like we could never be enough. Maybe they didn't even have any expectation for us and they just berated and belittled us, which then made us feel like a victim of not being enough or worthy to be able to live the life that we really, really want. Because at the end of the day, if you are to be absolutely a success in any endeavor, right? So this could be in business. This could be in your job. If you want to go up the career ladder, if you want more financial security and abundance to serve yourself, your family, and the community, whether it be in relationships, whether it be in your health, all of those things, if you are to get to that place, and I've worked with many hundreds, like thousands of people over the years. I've been doing this for like 22 years now. And I've worked with people who weren't very successful and we then got to that success. I've worked with people who are successful who still have issues in some context of their life. And I've noticed that it's all about a strategy. Now, of course, there are many ways of getting there. It's not just my way. It's not just my hypnosis. There are so many amazing ways of transforming it. I have my way. I have my truth because I've managed to do it for myself and kind of replicate it in other people or worked with people or modeled them. But at the end of the day, those who are successful, those who are the victor of their life, a victor of their circumstance, in other words, the things that they have in their environment, however they go into an environment, so a relationship environment, a work environment, a financial environment, a health environment, those who are successful assumed 100% responsibility to be in charge of their mind and therefore their results. But in the very beginning, they were not like that. It was almost as if, rather being like allowing life to be a product of what they really wanted, they allowed life to be causing them to be a product. In other words, you're allowing life to cause you to be a certain product, or I'm trying to think of the right words here, but ultimately, I always say, rather being a product of life, allow life to be a product of something you choose to create. So rather being just a product to our experience, in other words, how we were treated at school, how we were treated by our friends or our family or the relationship, or maybe a bankruptcy in the last year, or the firing or the sacking, or whatever the situation is and the events we went through, rather being a product of just that, realize you are more than that. It is something that you went through and it shall pass. It will do. And sometimes the good things will pass as well, because we live in a human experience with a kaleidoscope of emotions, and we have certain things in our life that is beyond our control. But if we're out of control of our environment, we must have control on the inner environment, which is your thoughts, which is your feelings, which is your beliefs, and what is your behaviors. I always love the quote, you've probably heard me say it millions of times by now, but Viktor Frankl said, when you're unable to change your situation, you are challenged to change yourself. And think about it, his name was Viktor Frankl, so Victor, and he was in the concentration camps, who was able to survive that and then come out with it, although being like a psychologist in the beginning, but to go through something like that and still have that psychology that when we're unable to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. And that brings me back to the point of being vulnerable. You see, when we think of being vulnerable coming from a place of not being worthy, not being deserving, not being strong enough, not being capable, the fear of failure, fear of success, a fear of what people think, all of those things, usually what comes to mind is vulnerability is a weakness, right? Vulnerability means I'm weak. We have a lot of these statements that we say to ourselves, that this means that I'm not good enough, then that means I cannot have the relationship that I want. I'm not worthy, so therefore I cannot have the abundance that I want. We always make these, in language, we kind of call it complex equivalence, where we have these big meanings which then generalize to things which, when you really think about it, doesn't make sense, but it matters and means something to us if we come from that place of not being worthy or enough. So if we are to think that being vulnerable is a weakness, how are we ever meant to change? Sometimes you've got to be vulnerable with yourself. And that's what I mean when I say to look in the mirror, to look in the whites of your eyes, to really weigh things up as to where you are. Like, are we happy where we are? It's nothing to hide from. It's life. We've gone through some horrible things, so it's more than natural to feel that way. But if we just run away from it, if we keep escaping it or bearing it down and repressing those beliefs and emotions, they're always there, and they always seem to come up in the moments we don't want them in a far bigger way. So recognize that being vulnerable can be one of your greatest strengths, one of your greatest gifts in this moment. And the reason why it can be a gift is because you are honoring yourself. By being vulnerable, by waking up as to where you are right now, you are being an honor to yourself. You're honoring that something's not quite right, and therefore I want to do something about it. You see, everyone who's been a success, and think about this, right? Every movie that you've probably ever watched, every book that you've ever read in some form of fiction, the person in the movie, the superstar, whatever it is, life's not always perfect. Something happens and they get vulnerable with themselves to recognize that something's not quite right, and it's now my time to do something about it. They call it the hero's journey, of really understanding that we can be in this moment together right now, not from weakness, but from a place of just recognizing your beingness. That's all it is. This is just the present version of you. And there are many versions to come. In fact, when I call it my program, it's like we have like the 1.0 version of us, the present version, and I want to get people quickly and effortlessly to the 2.0 version, the 3.0 version, and how many other updates we go along the way. But this present version of you in your present circumstance does not have to stay here. When you begin to look in that mirror and go, something's not right, and that's okay for this moment. because I've been through many, many things. But if I'm in order to be moving from the victim to the victor, I must also simultaneously honor myself in assuming responsibility for who I am right now. I don't have to assume responsibility for what other people did to us. Like I said, the parents who may have had high expectations or belittled us, or the bad relationships with narcissists, all of those things. It's not like we're letting them off the hook. In fact, we're doing something quite different and quite the opposite. You see, when you assume responsibility for this moment, this present version of who you are right now, you can then start to do something about it. You can then start to be an example of what can be done. And that means you show people another side of you who is the warrior of your life, like the peaceful warrior who can go into situations. That means if we have, for example, children, we may be able to inspire them rather passing down the same story that was given to us. And that means that whether it be our neighbor or whether it be the person that we work with, we can show them a different version of ourselves. And really, when you win in updating yourself, when you win in the lucidity and the fluidity of you from where you are to where you want to be, and it's not that it has to happen, but that's the greatest way of showing those people what may have done something to you, how powerful you are. So in fact, it is not a weakness by doing so. It's not letting them off the hook. In fact, you are showing them something so special, which is you, that is what is possible, what can be done, who you are. So wherever you are right now, it will pass. It will pass. But it passes quicker through the seasons of life by taking responsibility in the vulnerability, taking that internal check and go, look, I'm not happy. I'm in a sad space. But just because I'm not happy, just because I'm in a sad space, just because I feel like there are no options, it doesn't mean there have to be only no options or sadness or unhappiness. In fact, you can rise up today. You can do what has to be done. And I'm not saying you should join my program. I mean, it is an amazing program. I put my heart into it and we get crazy, crazy results. Like, this being recorded live on YouTube, and we talked about some of the celebrations that people had, but I'm not here to sell that at all, because there's so many other things you can do, and my program is very, very specific for the person who really wants to change, who's a professional, who wants to go all in on themselves. And it is application, and therefore it's very customized, so I just cannot do that. So I'm not saying that to sell you on, but I'm trying to sell you on yourself, that there is so much more to be had. So it starts, yes, from the victim side of things. That's how you know you got a problem. That's how you know that something's not right. Otherwise, you're just asleep. You're sedated by life. You're sedated by the events of the past. You think that it's normal to feel that way. But I'm going to presume the nature of you being here, listening to this, it means you're not ready to carry on being sedated. You're not ready to remain asleep. You're not going to keep on being hypnotized by the past events, being just incompetent as to what's really happening. I think you're here for a reason. I mean, I do believe in synchronicities, of course, and only you can make that to be true or not as well, because it's all your personal truth. But when we go, I'm ready to be vulnerable with who I am, that's strong. That's strength. That's you assuming responsibility. That's you going, I don't like where I am and I'm ready to change it. When you go from that place, and I always think of it like cause and effect, something I can talk about all day. But if we think of like cause is greater than effect. Well, if we're on the effect side of the equation, we have reasons for staying the same. My parents were like this, and that's why I'm always going to be the same. the bad relationship I had, that's the reason why I'm always going to have low self-worth. That's you giving your power away. The economy tanks and therefore I can't start up a new business. I got fired and therefore this means that. That's the effect side. That is where we are the effect of our environment, the effect of life. But if you start to wake up today and go, do you know what? I'm ready to go all in on myself. That is strength in being vulnerable. That means you move from the effect side of the equation of the C is greater than E to the cause side, which means that you assume responsibility for those reasons, not to let others off the hook, but responsibility for this moment. Only you get to decide that, which is great news. That means I don't get to decide it for you. That past person did all the pain and trauma. They don't get to decide anymore. You actually take their power away from that. And you own your own power. You own your own energy. You are the owner of your thoughts. Now, the problem is, of course, the unconscious mind, which runs those thoughts, which runs the emotions. Otherwise, you'll click the finger and let it all go yourself consciously. That just means if your unconscious mind is doing it, you have to connect with it. I always say you got to meet the issue where it lives. And that is why hypnosis is very, very powerful in my opinion. It helped let go of all my blushing, anxiety, and self-consciousness, the fear of not being good enough, and all those things. And everyone I work with, right? So I know that it's powerful because it meets the issue where it lives. But in order to do that, you've got to assume responsibility to maybe listen to it. You've got to assume responsibility to be vulnerable. You get to do the work. Let me say that again. You get to do the work. You get to do it, right? No one else is making you. No one else is forcing you. No one else is saying you cannot do it. You get to do the work on yourself. Think about that. If you can nurture yourself, your unconscious mind, if you can put it in an environment where things can grow beautifully, because you are beautiful in my opinion, just me saying that, you get to cultivate and nurture your unconscious mind. You get to do that. You have time to do that. And if you say, I haven't got enough time, there's always time. The time we're watching TV, the time that we're on social media, all of those things. There's a lunch break, there's an evening, once per week, 1 hour per week, you can dedicate to your own transformation. At the very least, that it is possible. So don't fall into the illusion of that, in other words, because otherwise you're not giving yourself enough credit and you're letting yourself off the hook. We want to be able to go, I get to work on myself. I get to live. I get to love. I get to love on myself. I get to nurture my unconscious mind. And one thing I always like to say as well is that I want to get my clients to give the unconscious mind of them what they really needed to know. Think about it like this. Most issues happen when we're young. Like in sociology, first 7 years is the imprint, the next 7 years is the modeling, the next 7 years is socialization, and so on. There's these phases of growth. Most of the time, our identity is formulated in the first 7 years to a, not fixed in stone, of course, but it's kind of fixed for a while unless we do something about it. So when we think about what we are formulated this, we did not have the right necessary environment or the people to nurture us. Well, if we can get our unconscious mind what it needed to know, what it needed to change, in other words, it could be self-love, it could be self-worth, it could be grace, it could be gratitude, it could be that beautiful essence of you, it has to change. Remember, all fear, all worry, all stress, all anxiety, all anger, sadness, fear, guilt, hurt, frustration, all self-sabotage, all beliefs of not being good enough, worthy, deserving, or capable, you fill in the blank, they are protective mechanisms gone wrong. The intention is pure in trying to protect you, but in the application of the issue never fits the intent. of protection, in other words. So we need to get the unconscious mind to level up by connecting with it. And that's why I say be vulnerable in the most powerful, beautiful way. Take the time out to design your life. You are the creator. You can make yourself a blank piece of paper or a canvas so you can start painting or writing the story that you want to create, not what other people have been writing. I mean, if you think about it, it just came to my mind. Are you going to allow other people to write your story? Are you going to allow other people to write your chapter? And every chapter? Are you going to allow people just to take the narrative of who you are and what is possible? When we put it like that, we need to say no. You can only, I'll take that back because other people do write our own chapters in our life. But to me, like, you are the one who can only assume that back, to take back that pen to write your own story, to be the hero's journey, to feel that love and presence for who you are, to be free of the imposter syndrome, to really live and love life and yourself. And that to me is removing ourselves from the effect side to the cause side of the equation. That is being strong in being vulnerable. You see, when people reach out to me, they tell me things that they've never told anyone. Close to the edge stuff. And when you sometimes take note as to what you're really feeling, you're acknowledging yourself. You're acknowledging who you are. It doesn't have to be all amazing at first. We want to be happy that we're not good enough, but we're acknowledging that we're not good enough to do something about it in that case. In that example, in other words. So take the time out to recognize that you are not fixed in stone. It is a behavior that we've been replicating. It's a story and narrative that we've been regurgitating. But maybe it's time to write the new story of your life. Maybe it's time to move from the victim by having all reasons or excuses for staying the same, to instead assume responsibility for what is possible. And you are possible. I am possible, right? You are able to achieve what you desire if you do the right work, use the right system to make that a reality. And like I said, I'm not selling my program. I'll talk about it in a moment. But there are many systems out there. You can use my hypnosis app. You can listen to all the free work. It's all there for you to use. There's other people out there. I just have my way of what I know works. And ultimately, you get to make that change. Like I said, that's the real theme here, that you can move from the victim to the victor by being vulnerable as to who you are, to then put the time in to make the change. Now, of course, if you want me to personally work with you to get you from where you are to where you want to be, to bridge that gap, to figure out how to get there, because we need to get out our own way and we need an expert to do that. I mean, we go to school because we have teachers to teach us. If there's no teachers, oh my goodness, there'd be a riot happening in that school. So we need educators. We need people to teach us who know that. Now, in my case, I am that teacher. I had my issue of not being good enough, worry, anxiety, and fear, all the self-sabotage, and discovered how to let it go. And we've been replicating that success for many, many years now. So if you do want to apply to personally work in a fully customized and tailored experience, yes, there is an investment depending on who we're working with and what we're dealing with. There's always an investment, of course, based on the time that we put into it. But what you get back is truly life-changing, even in investment, in my opinion, what we get back, because the cost of staying the same is always a cost. So you can go to josephclough.info/talk, and when you go there, you'll book a time to speak with the team, and therefore, when you show up to that Zoom call, we'll get clear on exactly what you want to let go of, exactly what you want to achieve, get clear on what's really stopping you, come up with a plan to make it a reality, all within 8 weeks in a customized way. You just book that call. You fill out an application, you attend the call, and we'll see if you're a good fit or not. If you're not, we'll send you elsewhere, like point to a different direction, because we only want to get results and we only want to serve those who we know are ready to be invested in themselves. So once again, that is josephclough.info/talk. But I just hope you got value from this. Like, make it a bit of a wake-up call to be able to do what has to be done. You can be vulnerable as a victor of your life, and to do and live, and also, which I absolutely love, when you change, you give permission for other people to do the same in your environment. And I always wonder about the ripple effects that you can have in the world by the very nature of you transforming. Think about that. If you were to transform in a way that will allow you to be the best version of you, knowing you're worthy and good enough, how could people possibly not change? You get to do what you love. You get to live and love life in purpose and on purpose. And that means everyone changes around you. To me, that's magical, in my opinion. And one of the reasons I say that as well, as just a side note, is because I'm very thankful I had my issue, because it caused me to wake up, solve it, and now I do a podcast which has hit almost 14 million downloads. Help lots of people with the free work by doing what I love, but I fell into it simply because I woke up to the point that my life, my issues, something had to change. So the ripples can go far and wide, and sometimes those ripples, which I want for you, will become waves to be able to transform the world around you. With that, I look forward to speaking to you on a future episode. Many thanks and goodbye.